Good afternoon and welcome to the FarmDoc webinar series. I'm John Newton from the Department of Agricultural Consumer Economics at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Today I'm joined by Dr. Phil Cardoso from the Animal Science Department. We're going to discuss today the new margin protection program for dairy producers. Phil's going to first start by discussing how to think about animal productivity and feed efficiency to determine what your farm level income over feed cost margin may be, an important consideration in developing a sound risk management strategy. After Phil concludes, I'm going to demonstrate the new USDA sponsored MPP decision tool. The tool was developed in partnership with the USDA Farm Service Agency, the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and the National Program on Dairy Markets and Policy. So without further ado, Phil, are you ready for the MPP?
I'm getting there, and hopefully after this seminar, more people will be ready for it, because I think it's a great program and a great tool that you guys put it together. And I just want to give my 2 cents here, and we're going to spend 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 15 minutes in the most, talking about some scenarios and how can I help you guys figure out what is the income over feed cost, or some measurements of efficiency at your farm. So that's what you're going to be looking at, the income over feed costs and also dairy efficiency of your herd, okay? One thing that I want to tell is that there is no secret, no magic, and we can do all this by hand, okay? So we have some guidelines, some rules of thumb that we say that 1 pound of dry matter intake, I'm going to be referring to DMI, dry matter intake, it's equal to 2 pounds of milk in a Jersey cow, or 2.5 pounds of milk in a Holstein cow, okay? And we can determine, so we have the requirements of dairy cow tells us that the dry matter intake can be estimated by that formula that I can show you. So if you have the body weight and how much milk a cow is producing, we can pretty much predict how much she's going to be eating, okay? So here you go. I had to do that one time at least, no more. If we have a cow with body weight 1,500, producing 85 pounds of milk, and with that milk fat, we can start plugging in numbers in the formula, where we're going to have that 27 that I'm multiplying 0.18 times the body weight, and now I have to figure out this 4% fat corrected milk. So I'm just transforming the milk of that cow in a 4% fat milk, okay? So then I can be able even to compare among breeds, for example. So the 4% fat corrected milk, we have another formula that we can do by multiplying the amount of milk the cow is producing by this factor, and now the amount of fat by this other number. Now, what is that other number? The amount of fat the cows are producing is pretty much easy to figure out. So it's the amount of milk times the percent fat. So this cow is producing 2.97 pounds of fat per day. Therefore, her 4% fat corrected milk is going to be 78.55, and she should be eating around 50.5 pounds of dry matter per day. Okay, that's what the NRC, that's what we are going to be getting it. So you guys can have an idea what your cows are eating and what they were supposed to be eating, okay? And of course, that's always checked by what actually is happening at your farm. To measure efficiency, so we're going to have that input, that is how much the cows are eating, and then you're going to access to something of output like milk production. And I'm highlighting here 2 of pretty much the most used ones, but remember, you have all these bullet points here that they can tell you a way of measuring efficiency in cows. There is a really good webinar at Hordes Dairyman did, where Mike Hutchins talks about all these items and how can you guys measure feed efficiency. So I would go to the archives and check that out if you have a chance later. But what I'm going to use for this purpose is, let's use this pounds of fat corrected milk per pound of intake as one of the measurements, okay? And when you divide that, how much the cow is eating, through what the cow is producing, now I'm calling it dairy efficiency. So we here at the University of Illinois have some guidelines for you guys, okay? So for example, the cow that I just showed you before, the 1,500-pound cow, she is producing 78.55 pounds of the 4% fat-corrected milk. Let's take that. And she's eating 50.5 pounds of dry matter. So if we divide that, that would give us a dairy efficiency of 1.55. So if she was a cow, for example, in a one-group TMR, like we have here at our university, all the cows, they get the same diet, should be pretty good, or even above our expectations. However, if she was a cow in a high group, mature cows below 90 days in milk, I would expect a little bit more from that cow, and I would say, she's not the best efficient cow in my herd. I should try to improve some of the things, okay? So efficiency, it's input or whatever the cows are eating that you guys can access in your herd divided by what she's producing. And pretty much we are using here is the milk and using some milk components as well, okay? Now, the challenge that I have for you here is, if I have high dairy efficiency, does that mean that I have higher profitability? And just to put in account, do you guys like to have a herd with 50 pounds of milk average? For our Midwestern standards here, 50 pounds is pretty low, and I'm not sure it's going to pay the bills. We have, it's not hard to find in Illinois, Wisconsin, around here, herds with yearly average of more than 100 pounds of milk per cow per day. That's a lot of milk. So my point being is, if a cow is producing 50 pounds of milk per day, okay, and she's eating 25 pounds, her dairy efficiency is 2. So you'd say, wow, this is a great cow, dairy efficiency of 2. However, she's not paying the bills. You need to make money off that cow, so usually you're going to be working on the break-even component of the equation, or how much money I'm getting out of that cow, okay? And one of the things is that we know that feed costs are one of the biggest or the largest amount of money that the cost of production is made of, feed. So I want to challenge you that just their efficiency is not enough. You need an extra step, okay? And one of the things that I believe is giving you the message is income over feed cost. So how much money you're making per cow after you pay your feed bills, okay? And you can easily access that by all the changes you do. However, I just wanted to highlight that sometimes you'd like to have some things in your diets that is not going to be the most efficient one, or is not going to be the cheapest one, but you just need to have it there to make sure cows are healthy and the reproduction. Remember, cows, they have to calve every year. At least that's what you would expect them, and that's why you guys work so hard for it, okay? So income over feed cost. And my challenge again is, what is your cow or your herd income over feed cost? And sometimes it's a little bit confusing. That's why we developed a pretty simple Excel that we're calling the Dairy Focus Toolbox for dairy efficiency, where you guys can put your numbers there and figure that out, okay? So that's my way of, our way here of helping you guys to work on this. So this one information that you guys will need is how much your cows are eating. So here our herd manager, Henry, he does a pretty good job on every day. He knows the amount of feed he needs to feed that lot. I'm talking about lot 1 and lot 3. We have 2 lots here. Every farm is different. We fed that day 6150. This is the dry matter of the feed. This is the error, so he can go back and talk to his feeder and say, hey, let's try to improve this. This was the refusal that he found the next day, and the dry matter. We don't have a cover bunker, so this can wait a lot sometimes when it rains. For example, we know here the intake, and we know how much each cow ate that day, because we had 55 cows. We had 55 cows in that lot. Therefore, the average of that week was this one, 50 pounds, 44 pounds. We have some jerseys in this lot and cows in more late lactation. Bottom line, the average is 47 pounds of dry matter intake, okay? So when you use that, now I can use that in the tool. So again, this is a broader vision of the tool. I'm going to show you. You guys can go to the website, dairyfocus.illinois.edu. You have that tool over there. I'm going to show a little bit later. And I'm going to build up one scenario here. But remember, I'm pretty sure that you guys already have in your minds at least 10 or 15 scenarios going on now, how things can change. Okay? I'm going to show you this left part of the tool right now. So the first thing here is I want to highlight that the orange squares, that's where you can type your information. The blue ones, that's where you don't need to type. We are calculating everything for you already. And so here you're going to get your milk check. And even yesterday, John shared with me some other options that you can build on here to be more representative even for the country. But here in the Midwest, you guys get paid for components heavily. So I'm just taking out of your milk check and I'm putting all your money here. The point is, in the end, you need to have your milk price represented in this spreadsheet, and I'm going to show you exactly where you should look at that. Okay, so you put all your prices for components. This is your cost per day to feed your cows in a dry matter, okay? And here I'm just dividing this one by 47. That's how much it cost me the dry matter per pound, okay? Then I go lower in this equation where I have my herd here that I can have lot 1, lot 2, it doesn't matter. You guys can change all the time. It's our orange block. You can do it. This is how much my cows are producing, this much fat, this much protein, this much other solids. This is how much she's eating. We just saw the 47. This is the price per pound. That brings me to how much I'm getting per cow per day. So my revenue per cow per day is this one. And again, this one is that your milk check needs to match. If I'm getting $24 per hundredweight in my milk check, 24 needs to be there. So your numbers that you typed up there needs to match here in the build-up. But the point is, I'm making $11.63 with over the feed cost I'm making with this cow. Okay, so feed represents 36% of my cost here. Okay. Now, what I want to do in this scenario is, let's say we change, okay, the dry matter of this cow. You put fans, you put better comfort to those cows. Now you can make them eat 3 pounds more. As the rule of thumb, you can get from 3 pounds of milk, let's say you're going to have 6 extra pounds of milk. That's your milk yield here. And see the impact that you have. You pretty much are getting $1 more per cow per day just by making your cows a little bit more comfortable, or using a strategy or making them eating 3 pounds more of dry matter per day, okay? And you know, you can easily multiply number of cows you have per day, per month, per year, and you can see the amount of money you could be making there. The second part I'm doing it is just calculating for you all those types of milk that I've mentioned, energy corrected milk, okay? She's going to be producing more energy corrected milk because pretty much she's producing more milk. The solids we kept the same, but we can play with all those numbers. Remember, orange squares, you can type everything. So this is how it changes your 3.5 energy corrected milk, where I'm accounting for protein here, milk protein, and all your fats, 3.5 or 4% fat. And in the end, what we have is a dairy efficiency. It's calculating for you. Here I'm bringing again our recommendations for your farm, for your herd. So we have a dairy efficiency of 1.58. And if I had the extra 3 pounds of intake with 6 pounds of milk, I would have an efficiency of 1.61. So I could improve efficiency by improving comfort, for example, okay? So scenario 2 could be something that you add corn gluten feed to your diet, and you add canola meal and you make it cheaper, and you think you're going to get more milk protein out of it. That's a scenario that you can play. Because of time, I'm not going to do that. We can do that another day, another opportunity. So I'm going to jump to where you guys can get this spreadsheet to use. So you click in the Dairy Focus Illinois, you can go to Research and Extension, and you're going to find the tool over there. And I think that's my 2 cents or 15 minutes on the issue. And I really want you guys to enjoy and use most of the time to learn a little bit more about this tool.
Thanks a lot, Phil. That was really great. And I think this tool that you've developed goes a long way to help farmers understand their animal productivity and what their income over feed cost margin may be. And there are a lot of other financial factors that dairy farmers should consider when assessing their risk. Liquidity and solvency, analyzing their farm balance sheet. That's all very important in understanding how much risk they can take on the farm. To help farmers manage that risk, the USDA has introduced a new program, and that's the new Margin Protection Program for dairy producers. That's a national program which helps dairy farmers manage their income over feed cost margin. So let's go more into the safety net program and learn how it came to be. In order to access the tool during this webinar, you can use the tool at fsa.usda.gov/MPP tool. And then to get educational materials which will accompany this webinar, you can go to dairymarkets.org/MPP. We'd like for users to submit questions during the presentation so that when we wrap up, we can take questions and answer them from the audience. So what is the income over feed cost margin? Well, this is a national margin. So we have a U.S. all milk price, which is announced by NASS. We have the NASS corn price, the AMS Central Illinois soybean meal price, and then the NASS alfalfa hay prices. These are national feed prices. And then we use a national feed ration to determine what the income over feed cost margin would be. And so this graph demonstrates what the 2014 Farm Bill introduces as the dairy production margin. And as we see in June of 2009, this margin hit an all-time record low of $2.25 per hundredweight. We lost a lot of dairy farm families in 2009, and after that, the USDA secretary introduced the Dairy Industry Advisory Committee. And one of their recommendations was to revamp the Dairy Safety Net program and include dairy margin insurance. So in 2011, the Senate had their first hearing on the Farm Bill, and National Milk's Foundation for the Future Dairy Margin Insurance Program was a critical component of that Farm Bill. The items that make up the new feed ration is pretty simple. 50% corn, 25% soybean meal, and a quarter hay. So these are the prices that dairy farmers need to think about when they're thinking about managing this national income over feed cost margin. But wait a minute. If we go back, we remember that dairy farmers did have a safety net. We've had the MILC program, which is the Milk Income Loss Contract program, since 2002. And if you go back and look at the historical data, since 2009, MILC covered 185 billion pounds of milk and paid nearly $1.6 billion to 47,000 dairy farmers. The problem with the MILC program is that it didn't wholly account for volatility in feed markets, and then there was a 3 million pound cap on benefit constraints. So the MPP program helps to address some of those concerns by directly tying in feed prices and then getting rid of all eligibility constraints. If we look here, we can see that only 42% of the U.S. milk supply was covered by the MILC program, and benefit concentration was heavy in the upper Midwest. Larger dairy farms who exceeded that 3 million pound production cap received very little benefits from the MILC program. See here, California, less than 25% of their milk supply was covered by MILC. So MPP is the new safety net. MPP is a voluntary program designed to protect dairymen from downturns in the dairy margin. It makes payment when this national margin index falls below farmer-selected coverage options. Price floors are available from $4 to $8 per hundredweight, and farmers can cover 25 to 90% of their historical maximum level of milk production. Farm operators participating in the program will pay a $100 administrative fee, and then they'll pay premiums based on their selected coverage levels. Payments under MPP are based on consecutive 2-month average margins, so January, February, March, April, all the way to November, December. So up to 6 times a year, dairy farmers could be eligible to receive an MPP payment. And importantly, there are no eligibility constraints, no adjusted gross income or production caps with this new program. Without production caps, MPP is a much larger safety net for dairy farmers. So if you just take a simple average of the U.S. milk production and you put it through the MPP determination for how many pounds could potentially be covered, we're looking at 182 billion pounds of milk that's eligible to enroll in MPP every year. And if you go back and look at the slides, since 2009, MILC only covered 185 billion pounds of milk. So we're increasing the size of the dairy farm safety net with this new program. And it's a new way to think about safety net. So we're not thinking about the Boston Class 1 price of milk anymore. We're thinking about a milk feed margin. And how do we manage a milk feed margin risk? So farmers participating in the program, they can think about a margin, think about margin risk, and make 2 critical decisions. 1, how much milk do I want to protect? I can protect 25 to 90% of my maximum milk production historically in 5% increments. And then, what margin level do I want to protect? I can pick anywhere from catastrophic $4 coverage all the way up to $8 coverage in 50-cent increments. So only 2 decisions that farmers need to make with respect to the program, but there are a lot of possible coverage combinations. We have 9 coverage levels and 14 coverage percentages, so we have 126 possible coverage combinations. Of course, farmers get greater protection by choosing these higher coverage levels, but that comes at a greater cost. So how do we think about where a farmer needs to be on this grid to get the right MPP protection? Well, that's a decision every dairy farmer is going to have to make. But to help them, USDA partnered with the University of Illinois and the National Programs on Dairy Markets and Policy to develop a web-based decision tool. And part of the web-based decision tool is considering the cost of participation. So we see here that $4 CAT coverage is free. A farmer needs only pay the $100 administrative fee to receive this coverage. But coverage levels above $4, farmers have skin in the game. And as you see here, our Tier 2 premiums increase 54 cents per hundredweight for 50 cents in coverage. So premium rates are an important factor in making a decision with respect to MPP dairy. So those are things that farmers need to consider. Anticipated risk in milk and feed markets, and then how much is it going to cost to get this coverage? So we've developed an online decision tool. And when I say we, I mean the National Programs on Dairy Markets and Policy and the University of Illinois. So the Margin Protection Program Decision Tool also includes an LGM Dairy Analyzer. And that's a program and tool that's been available for a number of years, developed at the University of Wisconsin, that's widely used as an LGM Dairy analyzer of premiums, and also looking backwards to determine how an LGM contract performed for a dairyman. So it's something that's used all over the industry. And in the National Program for Dairy Markets and Policy, we have the University of Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State University, Penn State, University of Minnesota, Cornell, and my alma mater, The Ohio State University. So we have 8 extension economists that came together to develop this tool and 7 land-grant institutions. We really think we've brought together some of the best minds in dairy to develop this decision tool. But what's so great about it? Well, it's easy cross-program comparison. So once I load the tool here in a few minutes, you'll see that within one click, farmers will be able to switch between MPP Dairy and the LGM Dairy Analyzer. Once in the LGM Dairy Analyzer, they can enter their unique contract parameters for LGM Dairy and then compare LGM Dairy premium rates to those that can be found under the MPP Dairy. We also built this tool with farmers in mind. So dairy farmers using the decision tool only need one data point, and that's their milk production history. And I've talked to some cooperatives out there who are already sending out production history information to dairy farmers. So a lot of folks already have that one piece of information that they need in order to make an informed risk management decision under MPP. Once they enter the tool, within 4 clicks, they can get the information they need to make an informed risk management decision. So the 4 steps of the tool. 1, what is their production history? They enter it in the tool, and then they're able to evaluate a margin forecast. The margin forecast that we provide in the tool is updated every day, and it's based on market anticipated risk in milk and feed markets. Once evaluating the forecast and the probability of MPP payments, farmers using the tool can select a coverage level and a coverage percentage. And then the best part is once they've done all that, they can print their farm-specific enrollment forms online and walk them into the FSA office. In 4 steps, a farmer can find out what type of MPP coverage is necessary for the dairy and then sign up. It also works on all electronic devices. So all the calculations that are done as far as forecasting a margin and calculating what the premium rates are going to be and what expected MPP payments may be, those are all done in the cloud. So as soon as you change a coverage option on your iPhone or your Android or your tablet, everything's updated automatically in real time on all electronic devices. And then another important thing, it's completely secure. We do not store farmer data in the tool, so they enter that one data point, and then once they exit the program, it's cleared. We don't keep it. So this is a secure tool. And then it's also free. USDA paid us to develop this online decision aid, so we've built this and we made it available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's always available and free to use. Dairy farmers can use it during the registration process to make an informed risk management decision. And then after they've made a participation decision, whether they've elected to participate or not, they can constantly come back into the tool and it'll keep real-time progress on what the actual prices are through the year, as well as what the markets anticipate the prices will be through the rest of the year to determine where certain coverage levels may end up throughout the year. So if farmers aren't participating in 2015, they can still use the tool to watch how it operates, watch how MPP will function as a safety net for dairy farmers, and then maybe think about an informed risk management decision in 2016. Or farmers who are in the program can look at their farmer-selected coverage options and evaluate how this program is operating as a safety net throughout the year. You can find online educational materials. So we can find videos, PowerPoints, printed materials, and links to all the other Farm Bill decision tools as they become available at dairymarkets.org/MPP. The USDA tool is at www.fsa.usda.gov/MPP tool. So let's get into a demonstration. Here we are. Let's first review the Dairy Markets and Policy page. So if you go to dairymarkets.org/MPP, you're taken to a page that on the right-hand side here has links to the decision tool, MPP videos, links to meetings in your state. So if you're interested in where Phil and I are traveling next for MPP or where meetings in your state may be held, you can find information here. A suite of PowerPoints describing the rules of the program and comparisons to LGM dairies available, and then other printed material with respect to MPP is online at dairymarkets.org/MPP. So some of the printed material, we have a very comprehensive document that details the rules of the program, farm affiliation issues, everything related to MPP, as well as some of the FSA fact sheets are all covered here at dairymarkets.org/MPP. But the decision tool developed with USDA, the primary home for it, is here at fsa.usda.gov/MPP tool. Users, when they come to the tool, are first greeted with this screen. It identifies when sign-up is available, so farmers during the 2014-2015 coverage years have to make a registration decision by November 28th, 2014. Now let me add, that's the day after Thanksgiving. And I talked to FSA folks, some people may be taking annual leave on the 28th. So farmers may need to think about how the holidays align with when they want to make a MPP registration decision. But anyway, during the first sign-up period, farmers can register for 2014 retroactively and 2015. And then in subsequent years, they'll have from July 1 to the end of September to make an MPP decision for the next coverage year. We also notified dairy farmers that MPP is subject to sequestration rules. Next, we just identify what's new with the tool. So just last week, we added the ability to print your FSA forms. And then we also tell you that we automatically include in the tool the USDA bump up of 1.0087 for farms participating in the program. And finally, there's a risk disclaimer that says, with respect to these decisions here, you are making an independent risk management decision. And once farmers agree to this, they're launched right into the tool. So this is the first thing you see. This is the MPP margin forecast through the next coverage year, 2015. And as you can see here, it's calculated using yesterday's market prices. Here we're in 2014. Looks pretty good. Margins are pretty good. But look at 2015. Think about the anticipated risk. Think about the risk that's in these markets today. As you proceed throughout the 2015 coverage year, this band gets wider. There's more uncertainty on where these margins could go. And then this blue line area, that represents the MPP trigger payment levels. I want to show you, before we get too deep into the tool, 2009 was a pretty bad year for dairy farmers. Let's look at what this tool would have showed in 2009. On September 30th, 2008, if you were to look at the markets and forecast what this margin looked like, the market identified that we were entering into a risky environment. And this is before Lehman Brothers. This is before any financial collapse. This is in September. Farmers are given an idea that you're entering a risky environment. And you can use that information to make an informed risk management decision. But let's go back to the current year. 2015. Let's put a production history in. Let's go 4 million pounds. That's step one. Let's enter my operation name. I'm in Illinois, but I am a former Buckeye. So my dairy is Buckeye Dairy. We enter that information and we review the margin. Let's look at this probability. What's the probability that sometime next year these margins could fall below $8? By clicking on probability table here, you're given the 2-month expected margins based on market anticipated risk in milk and feed markets on September 15th, 2014, so yesterday. Less than a 20% probability that these margins could trigger MPP payments below 8. But that's still a probability that dairy farmers need to consider when thinking about managing their risk. Go back to forecast graph. Let's go to select coverage. Here, farmers can use the drop-down box to change their coverage percent from 25 to 90%. And they can look at what's it going to cost to buy this coverage level and what's my expected MPP payment based on the probability that MPP payments could be made. As you can see, these payments are low because there's a low probability that margins are going to trigger at the $8 level. You can change it to 50%, and the fees and expected payments change to reflect the different coverage option that the farmer selected. Let's go back to 90%. So what we identify is that for this particular dairy, my Buckeye Dairy, for $650 coverage in 2015, it cost $2,500. My expected payment's $468, but I'm protecting myself against unanticipated risk in milk and feed markets. So if that's the decision I've made here, I can go to download FSA form. Now it'll ask me, it says, you've selected to cover 90% of your production history at the $650 margin level. Are you sure? Is that your final answer? And if it's correct, you click download FSA forms. Here's what they look like. So here we have a cover letter that says the following program forms were generated using the decision tool on September 16th. These are the forms that have been generated, and by November 28th you must sign and submit these forms to your FSA county office or the application will not be approved. As we move down here, we see that my dairy operation name has been populated, Buckeye Dairy. And if we move down, we see that my coverage options of $650 and 90% have been populated for me. Users can do this on a phone and get a PDF and then email it to themselves. So on any electronic device, you can generate this PDF and make informed risk management decisions. Let's go back to the tool. One of the interesting things that we decided to add in was an ability to go backwards. So if you want to look at how this program would have operated during prior years, 2009 for example, you can load in what the markets had anticipated the expected benefit would be using a forecast margin here. This is 2009. We can look at the probability table. So in September of 2008, there was over a 70% probability that margins during the flush season were going to trigger MPP payments at or below $8 per hundredweight. So a farmer looking at this information could make an informed risk management decision and think about how would this program work for me as a safety net during a catastrophic decline in farm equity. And then you can actually load the real prices that we've observed for demonstration purposes only, but see how this would have worked. And for this farm, selecting $650 coverage, the expected payment was $15,000, but margins were much worse. And the actual return would have been $75,000 from MPP Dairy. What does that look like? Well, let's look at the graph. And then let's include actual margins. This is what the market forecast. But here, when we entered a worldwide recession, these margins were even lower than the market anticipated. But the tool points you in the right direction and helps you think about what the risk in milk and feed markets are going to be. Let's look at what 2008 looked like. That looks a lot like today. And everybody remembers what happened in 2009. So it's important to think about what the risk could be with this program and how it can help you during a catastrophic decline in farm equity. So that was 2008, and look at 2015. Pretty similar. So farmers can use this tool to think about what the risks may be during the coverage year and make an informed risk management decision. And as you sit here in 2014 and you look at 2015, you may say to yourself, maybe I should get risk protection to lock in higher prices. And maybe LGM dairy is an alternative there. So within one click, users can click the LGM Dairy tool, and they're launched right into the LGM Analyzer. You can go and put in specific contract parameters that you want to do. And again, this is updated using the futures market. And here's your trade date information. You enter your LGM contract parameters, how much milk you want to cover, what months you want to cover, the feed equivalent that you'd like to declare for LGM Dairy, and then you're given your monthly gross margin. So here we see for this 10-month contract, using LGM Dairy, you're getting a gross margin guarantee of $12.55. What would that cost? Calculate the LGM premium. That's 18 cents a hundredweight. So users can make informed decisions going back and forth between what kind of contract parameters they like for LGM Dairy and also MPP. And think about which instrument best helps them protect against catastrophic financial losses. And again, we've built this to be easy to use and intuitive, but we also recognize that farmers, maybe they have different expectations. Maybe they want to think about what happens if feed prices rise or if milk prices fall. So coming soon, we're going to introduce an advanced feature that will allow farmers to think about alternative scenarios for milk and feed prices and enter that risk themselves to see if their forecast were to come true, how would MPP work as a safety net for them? So that's a feature that we'll load soon. It's currently unavailable. But farmers should look at this and make an informed decision. What is my farm level risk? What do I need to protect? And how does MPP help me do that? If MPP is not the answer, maybe futures and forwards contracts are, or maybe LGM Dairy is. But it's important for all farmers to assess their bottom line and know what their risk is and think about how they're going to develop a strategy to ensure that they continue milking tomorrow and the day after. So let's open it up for some questions here. We only have about 15 minutes left. So Jim, can you load some of these up for me? So the first question I see is, will this tool also compare MPP and LGM Dairy? And I think we've demonstrated that yes, it does. You can simply click between MPP and LGM Dairy. Now, LGM Dairy is a sophisticated program. You can declare how much milk you want to cover and how much feed you want to cover, and the ration is totally customizable. Once you decide what you want to protect with LGM Dairy, it's really easy to go back and forth and evaluate the premium costs and what you're actually getting under each program. So yes, it's possible to compare the two. The second question. My understanding is that sign up for this program to cover the entire length of the Farm Bill is November 28th. If we don't sign up by November 28th, will we get no other opportunity to participate? That's not true at all. Now, you do have to sign up by November 28th if you want coverage for 2015, but you can also sign up in 2015 for 2016. So you can defer the participation decision, continue using other risk management instruments if you'd like. That's up to you. Now, when you do sign up, so if you elect to participate by November 28th of this year, and FSA folks would encourage you to make sure you do that, make that decision before the turkey's served on the 27th, because they'd like to take the day off the next day. Once you sign up, you are in for the life of the program. And it's an entire year decision. So you can't go in and select, I just want to cover my flush months. You are in for the entire year. You're committed to pay the $100, and you're committed to pay the premiums. You have to pay at least 25% of your premiums by February, and the other half by, or the other 75% by June to participate in the program. Let's look at this next question. Does a producer have to pay $100 for 2014 and 2015? Yes, you do. The $100 covers administrative fees. So if you were in for 2014 and you're in for 2015, then yes, you'd need to pay $100 for both years. This is a good question, this next one. How do I determine the relationship between national MPP margins and my own dairy margin? I've been working in the dairy industry for over 10 years. I spent a long time with the federal order program, and I'll tell you, milk prices vary all over the country. Premiums differ. You have different PPDs in different parts of the country. So that's a very complicated analysis. And I would suggest if farmers can gather their own financial records to contact me, and I can help you evaluate your relationship to the MPP margin, because that's an important decision. All right, this next question. There are no do-overs. Can the farm manager change his or her mind on the level of participation during the sign-up period? That's exactly right. Once you elect a coverage level and the calendar year is started, you can't change it. But what you can do is you can print your registration forms for $4 coverage today, and you can walk it into your FSA office. And then you can watch the markets. You can see if the rumor of butter on boats to the U.S. is true, and if milk prices fall by November 28th. And then go in and make a more informed risk management decision. The beauty of markets is that they change every single day. And so farmers, during the registration period, similar to the MILC program, can change their mind and make sure that they've got the coverage they need, that they think they're going to need for the upcoming coverage year. Are there any risks associated with MPP in addition to the initial cost? Well, I like to think of it like car insurance. I pay a premium for my Progressive auto insurance every month. I don't expect to get in a car accident and need to utilize those services. But if I do, Progressive is there. In the same fashion, MPP Dairy, once you pay your premiums, if the announced margins are below your farmer selected coverage levels, it expires worthless, and you've paid your premiums to the program. But similar to an option, if there's value to it, it will make a payment to you. You will be indemnified for the difference between your farmer elected coverage levels and the announced MPP margin. Oh, this is a great question. Whoever submitted this, I'm really glad. It says, how does the program apply to dairy expansion? Do you have any tools to compare MPP to our own margins? And how do I determine my actual production history? Well, let's look at the production history. It's one number. It's one decision point that you need in the tool. But if you don't know what that is, we've got you covered. So you click this question mark here. We tell you what your production history is, the definition of it, but then we also give you a spreadsheet that you can download. You can download the spreadsheet, enter your monthly milk production, and import it right back into the tool. So we'll help you calculate the production history if your cooperative or handler hasn't yet sent you that information. Unlike the MILC program, MPP will not require dairies to provide FSA with monthly production pounds. The only production history required will be the 11, 12, and 13 annual totals. FSA is going to need to verify your production history. And so however you can verify those marketings to your FSA office, that's what you need. But once you've established a production history, you no longer need to verify that. That is your farm's production history. Now, there are bump-ups by the USDA in subsequent years, but similar to a Social Security number, that production history is not going to change for that dairy. It's a good question. Why is $8 the highest margin offered through MPP? Well, MPP, at least in my opinion, is not designed to be a whole farm insurance product. It's designed to protect dairy farmers against the catastrophic declines we experienced in years like 2009, 2012, 2013. A dairy farmer has an opportunity to go out and lock in higher margins, either through forward contracting, futures markets, or LGM dairy, than those that are offered under MPP. But MPP is a safety net that puts a floor with respect to these national margins on what type of risk you have to sustain on the farm. So it's not going to cover all of it, but it does cover some of it. Will premiums for coverage be paid to FSA office by the farmer? I believe the answer is yes. Now, I have heard from FSA folks that there may be consideration in future years to maybe have the premium deducted right away from the milk check. And if you think about it, some of these premium rates are pretty reasonable. For less than 10 cents, a farmer can get $5.50, $6 coverage under MPP dairy. That's less than the promotional fees that farmers have to pay. It's mandatory that dairy farmers across the country pay 15 cents into the promotion assessment funds. Yet you can get catastrophic coverage under MPP, some dairies can, for less than a dime. So it could be a smart risk management decision. Should people sign up for 2014? Well, on the Train the Trainer Roadshow last week, we got that question quite a bit. And the answer is, it's a retroactive decision. So you can watch and see what happens to the market and then make a decision. The point is, on September 1, we no longer had the MILC program. The new program starting on September 1 is designed to help people protect against margin declines. So you can watch the margin through 2014 all the way to November 28th and then assess whether you should get retroactive coverage. And if so, then maybe you should. But if the probability of payments is 0, let's look at that. Right now, if you look at 2015 and you go to select coverage and you go to the 2014 estimate, margins are great. The expected payment is 0. So as my colleague said last week in the Train the Trainers, take your wife out to dinner and then think about what you're going to do for 2015. Now, that's not advice. Don't quote me on it. Let's watch and see what the market does. But it may be something to consider. If you own 2 farms with common ownership, do you enroll each farm individually? On the dairymarkets.org/MPP website, we've got a comprehensive document that discusses the rules of this program. And so users that have very specific questions, I'd first recommend that they seek that document and see if that answers their questions, or maybe reach out to their FSA staff to talk about how their unique farm ownership structure is impacted by MPP dairy. Explain the bump in relation to registration. Well, the USDA every year is going to change your production history based on changes in milk production. So for 2015, your production history is automatically increased by 0.087%. Multiply your production history by 1.0087. Now, if you don't sign up for coverage in 2015, you don't get that percentage bump applied also in 2016. So in 2016, when they announced the next bump, you would only get that bump multiplied by your initial production history. So for some dairies, it's very important to think about the opportunity cost of missing out on that first bump up in 2015. Is the 4 million pounds calculated per month or per year? The 4 million pounds is an annual number. So if you produce over 4 million pounds each year, you could potentially be in a Tier 1 and Tier 2 premium category. The premium you pay is based on your covered production history. So you multiply your original production history by the coverage percentage to determine how much milk you're actually covering in the program, and then you assess that number to determine what your premium rate will be. So if we were to change this to 8 million pounds, right now we see $8 coverage is $20,000. Well, we're covering some of that milk at Tier 1 and some of it at Tier 2. But if we change this to 50%, all of that milk is Tier 1, which gets the lower premium rate, as you can see here. Are the MPP premiums a fair market value at current levels. The premium rates for MPP dairy are fixed. In 2014 and 2015, there's a 25% discount on everything but the $8 coverage level on Tier 1 premiums. But after that, they never change. But markets for milk and feed change every single day. So in relation to whether or not these are actuarially fair or fair option prices, the answer is no. There's an implicit subsidy. And sometimes that subsidy can be positive, and sometimes it can be negative. If the premiums are too high, if the market risk is very low, then premiums may be too high and there's a negative subsidy. But that's a result of having fixed premiums. The goal is to usher dairy farmers into a new era of thinking about risk management and getting skin in the game, similar to crop insurance. So they wanted to make the premiums low enough so that people give this serious consideration. And then in future years, if it warrants consideration, maybe they re-rate this thing every year. I'm not sure. That's up to a future farm bill to debate. Can I purchase LGM after you enter into MPP, and would this simply remove me from MPP since I cannot be in both? Once you sign up for MPP, you can no longer use LGM dairy. However, you could continue to use LGM dairy and defer your MPP decision until your LGM dairy contract expires. So for example, at these current margins, if you wanted to use LGM dairy through 2015, you certainly could. And then you could sign up for MPP in 2016 so long as your LGM dairy coverage ended by December of 2015. For farmers currently enrolled in LGM, USDA has a transition allowance to help you transition from LGM to MPP should you choose to do so. Oh, this is a great question. I'm organic. Will MPP be worth it for me? That's similar to a Jersey guy talking to me. They have higher components. You, sir, probably have a higher milk price. But nevertheless, this is a national program which pays off of a national index. So MPP can help to smooth your margins even if you have strong or weak basis. So I'd definitely give it careful consideration, even if you're an organic farmer. If you're in MPP the first year, is there no turning back? Once you sign up, you're in the program for the life of the farm bill. But that doesn't stop you from thinking about other risk management tools to complement MPP. So you could get in and elect CAT coverage for the life of the farm bill. And then think about what else you can do to supplement or augment MPP dairy to manage your risk. So while there's no turning back as far as getting out of the program, it doesn't close the door on effectively managing your farm risk. If during the registration period you can adjust your level of participation, can that decision also include dropping out of the program? Again, once you're in, you're in. But you can defer that decision until the year which you'd like to enroll. But I caution dairy farmers electing to defer MPP coverage to remember that there's no other safety net with respect to dairy margins other than MPP and LGM dairy. So if you're not covered, you leave open a lot of risk. And if we have a catastrophic decline in margins, which we currently don't anticipate, but if it happens, you want to be protected. So if you're not going to be in one of these, maybe forward contracting or futures markets is a cost-effective alternative. How does the feed ration for MPP compare to LGM? And this will be our last question. The feed ration for MPP is in the Farm Bill. It's fixed. Those parameters don't change. Similar to the feed components used in the MILC program, those parameters did not change as well. Whereas LGM dairy is fully customizable. You can elect the corn and soybean meal or corn and soybean meal equivalents that you'd like to use in order to protect a gross margin guarantee under LGM dairy. So the difference is LGM dairy is fully customizable, whereas this is based on a national index using national feed prices and a national all milk price to trigger MPP payments. There's basis associated with each one of them, and when deciding which program to choose, that's an important consideration. I'd like to thank everybody for participating in the webinar today. Thanks, Dr. Cardozo from the Animal Science Department.
Yeah.
Thanks to our host, Jim, here at the University of Illinois. And if you have any questions, I suggest you contact us. I'm available at jcnewt@illinois.edu. You can also tweet at me at new10_agecon. And we'll be loading this webinar on the FarmDoc page later this afternoon. Thank you.